Hey guys, so today we are starting lesson 1.1.4 and we are going to be talking about the quadratic formula. A lot of you guys probably remember the quadratic formula from Algebra 1, and so if you do remember it, that's great. You might be a little bit rusty, so we are literally just going to take this day to go over it so that you guys can use it. There will come a time where you guys will need to be able to do this. So we are going to use the quadratic formula, which is this guy right over here, this beast of a formula, and it is going to be used to solve equations that look like this. Basically, this formula will give us values for x that will make these equations true. Okay, and I want you to notice that in these examples that we're doing, notice how they're all equal to 0. Problems that you deal with won't always be like that. Sometimes you'll run into times where you have to play around with it a little bit to make it look like this. But today, for the sake of simplicity, we are just going to be working with ones that are already equal to 0. So, the first thing you want to do when you're doing the quadratic formula, and if you'll notice here, we have an A, a B, and a C, and those are the letters in our formula as well. So the first thing you want to do is go ahead and identify what those pieces are going to be. Okay, so A, notice it's the number with the x squared. Now, if there isn't a number there, as you guys know, probably we can always assume that there's a 1. And then for B, right, B is the number with the x. And here, again, there's no number, so we can assume there's a 1 there. So B is going to be equal to -1. Since there's a minus. Okay, and C is going to be the constant. Okay, that doesn't have any x's. That's going to be this guy right over here. -6. Okay, so now we are ready to plug in to our formula. So if we go ahead and make sure that our formula is right up here as we're going, we can follow along. So we know that x equals -b, that means opposite of b. So we'll put a negative, and then whatever our b value is, we're going to plug it in. Okay? Plus or minus, we'll talk about that, what that means in a little bit. The square root, b squared. So we're going to take our b term, make sure you put it in parentheses, minus 4 times a times c. Okay, and that's going to all be over 2 times a. Once you get it all plugged into the formula, then we just got to start finding ways to simplify it and make the easy calculations one by one. So anytime you have a negative and a negative, it's going to turn into a positive. So this negative times -1, that's going to be a positive 1. And then in the square root, you want to do those pieces one at a time. So negative squared, and this is a problem on the quiz that a lot of people ran into. Make sure if you type this in your calculator, you type it in parentheses so that it comes out positive. So -1 squared is 1. And then -4 times -6 is going to get you a positive 24, so it's going to be plus 24. And then 2 times 1 is just 2. Now we can continue to simplify it. Okay, we can't do anything else to that 1, but we can take care of this 1 plus 24. We know that's going to equal 25. And then we can take the square root of 25 to get 5. Alright, so now this plus and minus is going to come into play. That means we're going to have two answers. One of them is going to be with the plus, one of them is going to be with the minus. So this one, if we had a plus, 1 plus 5 is 6. 6 over 2 equals 3. So that's going to be one of our answers. And then the other one is going to be 1 minus 5, which is going to give us -4 over 2. So our other answer is going to be -2. Okay, and those are our two final answers. So let's do another one. You start the same way. A, since there's no numbers in front, we can assume it's 1. B is going to be 8. C is going to be 15. And again, we'll plug it into the formula. So negative 8 plus or minus. Then we have the big square root. B squared minus 4 times A times C over 2 times 1. So again, all we have to do is go in and simplify everything that we possibly can simplify. So in our square root, we know 8 squared is going to be 64. 4 times 15 is 60. And then over 2. I always draw the square root too long. Alright. So then now we can continue to simplify. We know that 64 minus 60 equals 4. And then now we can take the square root of 4 to simplify one more time. That's going to be 2. Okay, and then this is where we get to break off and find our two answers. So one answer is going to be negative 8 plus 2 divided by 2. It's going to be a negative 3. And the other answer is going to be negative 8 minus 2 over 2, which gives us a negative 10 over 2 for a final answer of negative 5. So our two answers for this one are negative 3 and negative 5. Let's continue on to another one. All right, again, A is going to equal 1. B is going to equal 13. It's always the one with the x. C is going to equal 42. So again, we'll plug into the formula. Opposite of b, plus or minus the square root. B squared, and these numbers are going to get a little crazy, so if you want to use your calculator, that's fine. I would probably suggest it so that you don't make any silly mistakes. Alright, so at this point, we know that we can change this to negative 13 plus or minus the square root. So 13 squared is going to be 169. And then we have 4 times 42. And see, this would be like a good time to use your calculator. So if we wanted to know what that's going to get us. So 168. Over 2. Okay, negative 13 stays the same. 169 minus 168 is just 1. So now we know that the square root of 1 is just 1. And this is where we can break it out into two answers. Negative 13 plus 1 over 2. That's going to give us a negative 12 over 2, which equals negative 6. That's answer number 1. And then we would break it into the other answer, negative 13 minus 1 over 2. That's going to give us negative 14 over 2 for a final answer of negative 7. All right, one final example. It's going to go the same as the rest of them. Let's do a new color. All right, so once again, a equals 1, b equals -10, c equals 16. So as usual, plug in, so opposite of b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. You'll notice that every time we've done this, our a value has been 1. That won't always be the case. It's pretty nice and convenient when it is, but sometimes it might be different. Okay, so we can start simplifying. That's going to turn into a positive 10 because a negative times a negative is a positive. In our square root, -10 squared is going to give us 100. Okay, and then 16 times 4 is going to give us 64. And because it's a negative there, -4 times 16, we have to keep the negative. Okay, and then all over 2. Continue to simplify the square root. (100 minus 64 is going to be 36. And so now our square root of 36 is going to be 6. So now this is where we get to break it up into 2. Okay, so the first answer, 10 plus 6 over 2, that's going to give us a final answer of 8. And then our second one, 10 minus 6 over 2, is going to give us a final answer of 2. Alright, and then that is the end of our quadratic formula examples.